Anita, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure, Anita. Anita Phagura is the founder of Fierce Project Management, and she is a passionate advocate for more diversity among our leadership of projects, of programs, and beyond. She knows that if you want to bring about real meaningful change, we have to shift the status quo, and we need leaders who can really push boundaries. Anita's background is in the rail and construction industry, where she was often the only woman in the room and the only woman of colour. She's heard too often messages of being too much or not enough or too different. And she knows that it is not the thing that we need to be doing to change to fit in. We need to find our authentic voice and be proud of it. Now, Anita is an ICF coach, and she coaches fierce leaders to embrace their misfit and to stand strong in their own shoes. Anita has a knack for asking the really hard questions that help people to develop and to recognize that misfits don't have to fit in. They have to create a culture where they can truly belong. So welcome, Anita.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited about this conversation.
Because of your background, I wanted to talk to you and learn from you, and for my audience to learn from you about building inclusive teams. And I think the first question that we have to ask is, what is an inclusive team, and why does that matter in our projects?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we hear a lot about the terms of diversity and inclusivity, but not all of us know what's the difference between them because they're often banded together. And the idea of diversity is something I think as project managers, we're really taught quite early on, and we are in some senses that we're taught that we need difference in our team. We need engineers, and we need site managers, and we need technical experts, and we need project management team, talking from my construction background. And of course, so we need diversity of skill sets. So we know that diversity just means difference. But in the context that we talk about diversity and inclusion, we recognise that diversity means more than just different skill sets, because if we have the same type of people, even if they are different professions, then they may be the same in other regards. So in construction, I was, as you said, often the only woman in the room, the only person of colour, because a lot of the teams would be white men, and that was the norm. But diversity means that we need that to really get the benefits, which we'll talk about. It's about bringing difference in. So it's about having, and differences can be all sorts of things. It can be about gender, it could be about race, it could be about mental health, it could be about physical disabilities, it could be about class, it could be about age, it could be about sexuality, and all of these different parts of our identity. And the reason that is, I think, really important, particularly in projects, is that actually then we're representing the end users. Because if we are not representing the end users in our teams, then we're designing and building products that aren't serving the end users. So that's one aspect of why that difference really matters. Inclusion itself is about the people around the table, the people that are part of the team, to feel like they are heard and respected, and they are involved in the decision making, and they are involved in the team. And why that matters, and why there's a difference between just diversity and inclusion is actually, from my personal experience, I've been in a really diverse team. It was ethnically diverse, but it was absolutely not inclusive. So it was quite a toxic culture. And therefore, we weren't getting the best out of those differences. That difference was being kind of dampened down. They were, those people had to conform and be a certain way to fit in. Therefore, we weren't making the most of that difference. So we can have diversity without inclusion, but we're not getting the best of things. And we can have inclusive teams without diversity. Actually, it's probably easier to have an inclusive team without diversity because we're the same culture, we're all the same. We can just have those in jokes and we just get what other people are thinking. but then we're missing that diversity of skill sets and diversity of that we spoke about. And then we can fall into groupthink because we're all thinking the same. We're not challenging each other. And so we're falling into the pitfalls of the risks and not spotting them, or we're missing opportunities, which in a project environment is really dangerous. And then the way that I see belonging is the next step beyond inclusion. So inclusion, we're listening to our team. We are ideally embracing that difference that they bring. But belonging is that next level, because when we're different in these environments, we can often feel like we don't fit in, or we hear messages that we need to fit in. And belonging recognises that actually we don't need to fit in, because we're losing those differences when we do. And belonging is about acceptance that we are different, and that's a good thing. And with that, we have lives outside of work. We have all these different aspects of our identity. We might be dealing with challenges. We might be dealing with mental health challenges. We might be dealing with family issues outside of work. And actually belonging is accepting all of those things and working together to really provide that environment where everybody can flourish.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of points you've made there that probably it's worth highlighting just to bring them up. I think firstly, you've distinguished very nicely between diversity and inclusion, and also the new word that you've introduced, which is less frequently used, certainly where I am in the UK, and you are too, which is belonging. And I think if I've understood you, diversity is about having the broadest range of different people in the organization, and we'll come back to why that's important. Inclusion is about actually making an environment where they feel welcome, but then belonging is making them feel it is their environment. It's not like they're welcome in someone else's environment. And so I think, for me, diversity is the kind of root of it. And I've always struggled with diversity. And what I've struggled with is why it isn't just an obvious no-brainer, because there is so much research that shows that more diverse groups, if properly allowed to function properly, and there's that respect, get better results. They get cleverer solutions to problems. They make wiser decisions. They can they're more resilient to challenges. Is there anything you kind of add to that in terms of that kind of resilience of a diverse group?
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said, there's just endless research that shows that teams, and we're talking about senior teams, the teams that run organisations as well, when they're diverse, when we've got women on boards, when we've got people of colour on boards, they outperform the competition. They are better representing those end users. They are less falling into they've got different risk tolerances, so they are perhaps challenging each other and not just falling into the same patterns. So it's absolutely a no-brainer, like you said. And yes, if that team is inclusive, absolutely, it's resilient as well, because we're working together and we are challenging each other, and we're going to be able to come over those challenges better by working together. So there's absolute resilience in that. Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, I think, that if you accept the case for diversity, then the case for inclusion and moving to belonging is simply because that's how you make diversity really work. So I think I'm keen now to move on to the real, what for me is the nub of it, is how, because people watching this were thinking, okay, I buy the argument, but what do I do? What can I do as a project leader to create the diversity that I believe in, and how can I make the people that I'm bringing in feel welcome in an inclusive and belonging environment? So what are your thoughts on that, Anita?
Oh, absolutely. So I think we want to start with the leadership team, and that is, flows down that culture that they breed. But as project leaders, we can absolutely do things as well.
Yeah.
And we want to start with building the team and look at hiring practices. So we, in the UK, but also elsewhere, we often hire people that we know, which is good in some respects, right? Because we have built those relationships. We know when we worked with people that are high performers before. So that in itself is not a bad thing, but it can lead to blind spots, and it can lead to us not necessarily getting the best talent. Yeah. But we can also fall into some stereotypes of what we think is the best. So often a saying goes of, well, it's the best person for the job. And actually, some people even say it's the best man for the job. You know, that's the original stereotype. And absolutely, we do want the best person for a job. But how are we judging best? Is it by what we think is the best, because that's what's taught in the culture that we're part of? So in the culture that I was part of, alpha male leadership was the predominant style. And they absolutely said other things. And they absolutely said empathy was important. But in terms of what I saw, mostly it was an alpha male style. And so that can, you know, then lead into, well, that's what we think is the best. And so when we are hiring somebody, we will hire with that in mind. So we've got to think about these biases and these challenges in our hiring practice. And even things like, it's been shown a number of times that if we look at if they do blind CVs in recruitment, that is, you're more likely to get diversity in the interview room. But actually, if we don't do that, we've got names that seem culturally different or are a different gender than our normative group, then they might not even make it to the interview room.
So I think it goes further than that, doesn't it? Because actually we talk about the best person for the job, and it sounds like that should be the obvious solution. But if you hire a team of all the best players, you don't get the best team. So, you know, just saying we've got a team and we've got a gap in it, maybe we don't want the very best player. We want the person who's going to make the team work. And if you set aside all the cultural kind of norms that you're talking about and just think of a model like the Belbin team model or the Garrison McCann team model, those models tell us that if we're missing someone with a particular skill set, then rather than get a brilliant person who has a skill set we've already got, bring in someone who, and it's the same, I think, with cultural and gender and all the diversity issues that you're talking about, is that maybe the best person for the job isn't the one that will slot into the team and make the team better.
Absolutely. And again, people can think about hiring for cultural fit. And then that's just keeping to the same culture we've got, which again is easier, right? It's really easy to stay the same. But if we think about cultural add, then we're adding and we're building. And we might want to think about diversity targets and positive discrimination. And absolutely, in an ideal world, we wouldn't need them. We absolutely wouldn't need them. But where we are now, even though it can seem like tokenism, it's the way that actually we guarantee that we will have difference in our teams. And hopefully in the long run, we won't need them. But right now, that's where we are.
So if I'm a project manager and I've managed to bring in some interesting new faces that bring some genuine diversity, like you say, now it's very easy for me to get on with half a dozen people who are just like me, who think like me, who look like me, who sound like me. But I've got a bunch of people who may speak different languages, may have different cultural baggage that they bring, and may have different ways of thinking. It's hard, isn't it, to talk to someone you just don't understand the way they think. So what can I do to get the best out of that team?
So absolutely, it can be harder, but it can be absolutely more fulfilling and more rewarding. And we've already spoke about the gains that the team can have. So have that in mind. And really, it's about making a real conscious effort, because we absolutely all have blind spots. We all make assumptions. And I've got a friend of mine who is Muslim, and it's Ramadan at the moment, and she got sent gin in the post as a welcome gift, and it was just thoughtless because she's not drinking. It's Ramadan, and she doesn't drink anyway. And it was just an assumption that, well, you know, this is a nice gift for people who use our service. And it's just that mindlessness, it's just that thoughtlessness. So actually, we do have to be really conscious with the choices that we make.
Can I just interrupt? Because I think that example is a very nice example of, you know, on the one hand, people will say, actually, that's fine. We need to treat everyone the same, to be fair. But actually, to be fair, we need to treat everyone as they themselves need to be treated. And that simple example is almost laughable. But when we get down to, you know, accommodating people with certain different abilities or disabilities, however you want to style it, treating people the same is not going to get the best out of your team, is it?
Oh gosh, absolutely. And I fell into this trap as a manager and a leader. I was like, and one of my biggest values is fairness. So I thought I've got to treat my team the same. And that led to all sorts of challenges and problems because my team are different. They've got different needs. They've got different ways of working. And so I was holding them to the same standard. And that didn't work. It led to so many problems. And now I know better. I know that we have to recognize those differences and absolutely not treat everybody the same. And even in that example I gave, we see that in the workplace when we're in a physical workplace also. Everybody's going to the pub after work. And actually, it's good for team building, isn't it? To have something where we do socialize. But actually, that's not for everybody. And yeah, we spoke about some cultures don't drink, but also when my friend shared her example, there were so many people that were saying, I'm a recovering alcoholic. And if that got sent in my post or I'm invited to the pub, then actually that's really damaging. We've got to think about these things as managers and leaders. And absolutely, we might not always get it right. And if we get it wrong, then let's be humble. Let's learn from it. But let's be conscious about it and let's not make those same mistakes again. So even with the team building, yes, I'm not saying never go to the pub, but let's think of ways that we can actually create team building in other ways that meets different people's needs. And actually, even doing something after work doesn't work for everybody. So I'm a mum and at the moment I'm working from home, but if I was in the office and I wouldn't always be able to go to an after work event, or a lot of the networking events are in the evening. Even now online, they're at bedtime. And of course, I don't always have to be the one doing bedtime duty, but actually it doesn't always work for me. So when we are thinking about these team building events, for instance, let's do them at times that work for our team. And that would be even better if we're doing that in the working day.
Yeah. In your writing, I've seen you use two words which I think are really interesting to me, which I'd value hearing about and sharing with the audience. The first word is advocacy and the other word was allyship. So in whichever order makes most sense, perhaps you can tell us what those two words mean and how they're important in building a truly inclusive team.
Yeah, absolutely. So the way I see allyship, it's about supporting those with difference. So even though I am not a trans woman or I'm not trans, I believe that I'm an ally to those people. And so in terms of when I see discrimination, then I will use my advocacy to support those groups. And I aim to be an advocate for all different diverse groups. I talk a lot about Black Lives Matter, and I believe that I'm an advocate for that. But as an ally, that means that I will support those groups and do what I can to shift the balance of discrimination and prejudice. But we can only really be allies if we are doing the best that we can to understand those people's needs. And this isn't about speaking for them, but actually it can be about giving those people a platform to speak, because we often have the notion of, well, we might have a white savior complex of, I'm speaking for this group, and that's not what underrepresented groups need either. So being an ally isn't necessarily an easy thing. It's an easy line to tread. And there's also something about performative allyship, which is about saying that we're speaking up for a group, saying that we're a group's allies, but actually we're just doing it publicly. And then behind closed doors, there is things that are hard, and we might lose some of our own privilege and power if we speak up for it, because it can be hard. But as a performative ally, we might not do that. So it's a whole complex issue, and it's not always an easy line to tread. But very simply, it's about just doing the best that we can to support these other groups that are underrepresented. Even if we're from an underrepresented group, there are other groups that need our support as well. And we absolutely do that by working with them, and it's not necessarily about working for them. So, and again, sometimes we might get it wrong, and that's okay, but let's learn from it.
And I've seen you do that very effectively through your social media which I follow, and I can see how it makes absolute sense what you're saying. To do something like that in your private life, or for people like you and I who are self-employed, we can make those choices. But what about within a corporate environment? You come from quite rigid, strict corporate environments. How could you apply those principles in a way that is not going to create more trouble? Well, you may be up for trouble, but it's not going to create more trouble than you choose, either for yourself or for the people you're aligning yourself with and advocating for.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what? We've got, we might have mortgages to pay. We might be worried about our job security. So we might see something and we might not like it. And maybe we can't do anything in that situation. And we've just got to make that choice. But there are small things that we can do every day. So an experience that often happens in the meeting room is that underrepresented voices aren't heard as much. So I did a survey 18 months ago with women in project management, and so many of them said to me that they felt like they weren't being heard, and they gave examples of being in meetings where they were talked over or their ideas were attributed to somebody else. And I had an experience where I was shushed in a meeting. I was like, oh gosh, that actually happened, and I was just so shocked by it. But these things happen so often. And I was in a particular meeting where they were looking for a solution to a problem. I said it, and then I said it again, and then I said it again, and then my boss actually at the time, he said the same answer, and then it was like, oh, that's the solution. I'm like, oh, I said that 3 times. But what somebody said in that room, they were an ally for me. They said, oh yeah, we've come back to that solution that Anita said. So they deliberately gave me credit. And what we can do is those small acts like that, we can acknowledge that, we can echo what somebody is saying. So if they are not being heard in that room, we can echo that voice and still attribute it back to them. We can give people opportunities and be conscious of that. So sometimes we get examples where people aren't given opportunities, and sometimes that's, just a blind spot. And sometimes that's discrimination, and sometimes it's because we're thinking we're acting in their best interest. So I told you that I was a mum earlier, and there are some things that happen, that there are some examples where I know that I've not been given certain opportunities because it was deemed in my best interest because I've got a toddler at home. But actually, that could have been my decision to make. So there are things that we can do to not fall into these traps, and again, just be conscious about it and do what we can. We can do what we can.
Yeah. And I think it's worth saying, certainly from my experience, that it is worth thinking through these issues periodically and actually deciding, is there a line beyond which, I will not accept, and where I will speak out and I will accept the consequences. Yeah. And certainly in my career, I had two experiences of actually drawing a line and saying, in one case, in a consultancy environment, I will not work for this company. And in one case, I stood up for a colleague and took the flak for a decision I made in support of that person. And I'm happy to say that for me, that worked out fine. I had a supportive enough environment. And actually, if I think back, in one case in particular, one of the partners in the firm was acting as an ally to me and helping me, saw the integrity of the choice I'd made and supported me through that. And I think that, we mustn't underestimate the fact there are people, good people in organizations, but for your own peace of mind, have in the back of your mind where your line is. The other thing I wanted to ask you is, are there any practical day-to-day tips to harness diversity of your group? So assuming it is working well and you've created that inclusive environment but it's still like the meeting example you gave, sometimes we just behave as we behave, even in an inclusive group. We just default to our natural things. That all of us do that. So how are there any kind of, if you like, systemic, structural, process-based tools that we can apply as project managers to really harness the diversity we've got in front of us?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, to be really get this right, actually we need to like break down all of the things that we know to be true and we think have worked in the past, and then actually build them back up in a way that works, actually genuinely works. But in terms of the practical things we can do, we can look at how we structure meetings. We can look at making sure that we're giving everybody a voice. We're including people that need to be there, and we're giving everybody a voice in that space. One of the challenges for underrepresented groups that is really important for our career progression is around self-promotion. Women and people of colour, for instance, are less likely to self-promote. Again, there's some cultural reasons for that. There are some norms about that, because there's a greater expectation on some people to be modest, but there are also cultural systemic problems in organizations that then punish that behavior. It rewards it for some groups, but then punishes other groups because you're being too big for your boots, you're speaking out of turn, or you're showing off. But actually, if we know that is actually important for career progression, because we're telling people what our skills are, we're telling people what we're achieving, well, actually, if we build that into our cultural norms, that everybody self-promotes, then it's not strange when we find a woman self-promoting or somebody of colour, and then we are doing our best to remove those judgments. So one thing we can do is look at how we can celebrate the wins, and create that in our meeting structures and elsewhere. So we can take these elements, we can look at how we can build sponsorship and mentorship. Often people from underrepresented groups, we still need people to open doors for us to get to those new opportunities. So what can we do in our team to make that more practical and actually make it formalized?
Yeah. And I think actually the metaphor I quite often use for project management is it's a bit like a project manager, a bit like a captain of a ship. You may be part of a fleet, you may be part of a navy and have to fit within the rules of the navy. But when you're out at sea, it's your vessel and it's your rule. Well, it's not your, how you choose to apply your rules and the day-to-day norms you accept. You've got a lot of control. And I think for us as project managers, we are in the privileged position of being able to make real change for individuals in the workplace, because we choose how to run our projects, we choose how to run our project events. And I think the tips you've given are great. But of course it does go wrong, and things can block inclusion and stifle the diversity we've tried to create. So from your experience, what can go wrong?
Often I hear inclusivity as a buzzword. It's something that's we will talk about because we're meant to talk about it, but it's not following through in terms of action. And I absolutely believe that if our leaders across the board believed in inclusion, we would have it already. So I think there are a lot of leaders out there who don't genuinely believe it. It's tokenism. We'll talk about it because we have to. And the reason being is that there's often a fear of, well, actually, if we're giving opportunities to these other groups, then what does that mean for us? What about if we lost power? What about if we didn't get the opportunities? Or actually, if we're talking about some of the challenges, and some of the biases and some of the cultural challenges, then there's a defensiveness of, well, I don't want to admit that I've got fallacies. I don't want to admit that I've done things wrong in the past. And actually, we need to be humble with this stuff, because absolutely nobody gets it right all the time. So we need to be humble, and we need to be really willing to learn and unlearn some of the things that we have assumed to be true, or we've been taught to be in certain ways in our organisations and beyond in our structures and systems. So a lot of it can also be about this personal gain and the politics within organisations. So all of that means that we can actually be in some quite toxic environments. And what I believe is that when we don't have inclusivity, actually that just breeds toxicity, because we're not listening to each other, we're not supporting each other, we're not respecting each other. So, I mean, I'm a psychology student originally, and so I find it fascinating about how we as people behave, but absolutely, we are people in work. So we bring all of this personal stuff into it, and it's people that have created these structures and systems. And so sometimes they're not necessarily in the organizational benefit, even though we think they are. But actually they're about personal gain. They're about me wanting to get to the vice president position. And so, you know what, I'm not going to support the next person up the ranks. And we sometimes find this with people in underrepresented groups, that they've worked up and they've got through the ranks and they're in a senior position, but they might not be helping others come up as well, because they've had to do it the hard way.
Yeah.
And so a lot of this can be the personal things that get in the way of genuinely creating the best team.
Yeah, I think I'm fascinated to hear that you're a psychologist by background, because I tell so many project managers, if you're going to study one thing once you've got project management nailed, it's psychology. And I think what you've highlighted is, you know, one of the fundamental truths that psychology tells us is that as a human being, we are fundamentally a mixture of who we are as an individual and then all the cultural overlays and norms and stereotypes that are imposed upon us that we choose to adopt or reject. And if you drill down, the variation between you and me and everyone else as individuals is far greater than the variation between one grouping and another grouping. And understanding that is really critical. One thing that I'm really interested in, because I am, you know, the quintessential middle-aged white male in a European background, in a European culture. So life has been relatively easy for me. I'm happy to acknowledge that. But if I want to help someone of color, a woman, someone with a disability who, you know, I have a limited understanding of their needs, my first instinct is to ask them what I can do to help. But I am aware that that can be or come across as patronizing, even if I don't intend it to be. It, as you say, there's that kind of savior mentality, mighty whitey, whatever you want to call it. So as a woman of color, what's the best way for someone like me to ask you how I can help in a way that is genuinely respectful? What tips would you give people trying to help?
So yeah, absolutely. It can be a fine line to tread, but I think if you've got the best intentions, and if you are doing it not from a place of I'm better than you, because actually, like, there are ways that I might be able to support you. Like, it is always, if we can do that as a way of, it's two ways, but actually still recognize that there is a power imbalance overall, then these are difficult conversations, or they can be, but actually they're important conversations. So I just think it's really important not to brush this stuff under the carpet, because then we don't have belonging, because then all of this stuff's under the carpet and it will come back to bite us in some way. So I think it is just about creating that space where we can have these real genuine conversations and admit our own blind spots and say, you know what, I want to support you in the best way, and I don't want to make assumptions about this. So what can I do? What do you need? And are there ways that I can support you? And I think if you're coming at it from a good place, with the good intentions, then that's really important. And I think it also links to this idea on a greater scale of the idea that we might expect those people that are from underrepresented groups to teach us. And we see this in workplaces. We have employee groups, don't we? We have BAME groups, I'm going to say that, and we have women's groups, and we have LGBT groups, which have a purpose, because they can provide a culture and a connection with people with perhaps similar challenges, and they can provide a voice in the organisation. But they can also be added work for these people. They could be and they're not paid on top of the day job. So sometimes there's an expectation of these organisations that we create this group, and therefore the women will be part of that group, and they'll do the diversity and inclusivity work for us. And you weren't asking that at all with your question, but sometimes organisations do that. So let's not expect all the diversity and inclusion work to be done by people that are doing their day job as well. So let's create the space that we bring experts in, and we do ask these people what they actually genuinely need, but not put all of the expectation on them to teach us. So actually there are resources out there. There are books that we can read There are courses that we can go on and pay to go on.
Yeah.
And we don't have to expect those around us to have the burden of teaching us everything as well.
Yeah, great. While I'm at it, I mean, you said there are books you can read. If someone's fascinated by this conversation and wants to go a step further, are there any particular books that you would recommend that get it right and overview the topic nicely?
Absolutely. There are some books that I absolutely love, and there are absolutely more than I've read. So I can tell you the one.
A good starting point for a beginner, perhaps.
Yeah, a couple that I really love, which are brutally honest, but and make you think, and made me think. There's one called Why I'm No Longer Talking to White People About Race, and it's a really powerful read, and I recommend it to people from different cultures. But also, if you're brave enough to read it as a white person, I think it is really enlightening and fascinating. And I love a book by Mary Portas about it's called Work Like a Woman. I was just trying to think of the title, and it's a manifesto for change for women. And another good read is Invisible Women, and it talks about how women are. It talks about data sets. It talks about all different data sets, and it's really a powerful read in terms of recognizing how women, and we can apply the concepts even though we haven't got the data for other groups, however, how women are often left out of decision making, and how actually our normative thinking is to cater for a male society. And so this leads us to challenges in absolutely everything, in terms of how we plan towns, in terms of how we responded to this pandemic. I remember at the beginning of the pandemic reading one of her chapters, and it talks about we have these events and disasters, and women are left out, and it absolutely predicted the backward steps that we've had in gender equality as an outcome of this pandemic. And it talks about, well, we can learn from it was written before the pandemic, the global pandemic, but it talks about, well, we've had pandemics in other cultures. We can see that women were left behind. We can see that they didn't have childcare support, and we can see that they paid a price on gender equality. And so it gave me goosebumps reading that, with everything that's happening there, and women have been left out of a lot of the decision-making process. So I just think they're three really powerful reads.
Are there any kind of last thoughts or tips you want to leave us with before we close?
So I think the overall thing that's just really important is just coming at things with an open mind, and just trying to drop what we think we know, to approach, which is not always easy, but to approach our situations with genuinely, how can we do the best for our projects and for our team? So we have to drop some of the assumptions that we think we know.
Thank you very much. And now, because I think people will have learned a lot from this, if people want to either get in touch with you through social media or learn more about your ideas and that, tell us how people can engage with you online.
Absolutely. So I am on most social media platforms. I'm on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. And I have a Facebook community called the Fierce Project Management Allyship. And what I wanted to share with you guys is also that you can join my newsletter, which is a fortnightly Fierce newsletter that lands in your inbox. And we talk a lot about inclusive leadership. And within that, there's Fierce Project Management Book Club. So we have recommendations to read or videos to watch that can broaden your understanding as well.
Yeah, and you do coaching and mentoring. So if someone thinks, you know what, I could really do with finding my voice and gaining a professional ally, if you like, how can people find out about your coaching and mentoring?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can drop me a message on the social media platforms, or you can go to my website, fierceprojectmanagement.com, where you can book a call to speak with me. And I work with people who want to be more inclusive leaders, and I also work with people who are from underrepresented groups and want support to step up their career and lead in a way where they don't have to fit in anymore.
Perfect. Anita, it has been an absolute pleasure. I've learned a lot. I think everyone listening will have learned a lot too. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a pleasure. Please do give us a thumbs up if you like this video. I'll be creating loads more great project management content, so please subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you don't miss any of it. And I'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.